Development zone villagers ask government to leave their homes intact. Aquino makes a second visit to typhoon disaster areas. And results of a presidential runoff in the Maldives.
Good evening. Abdullah Yameen has won the presidential runoff held in the Maldives, scoring a decisive victory over former leader Mohamed Nasheed. It puts an end to a long and drawn-out election which became mired in controversy and generated fears about the future of democracy in the Maldives.
There were celebrations in the Maldives last night as supporters of Abdullah Yameen shared the news that their man would be the Indian Ocean nation's next president. After several false dawns since September, with the Maldives failing 3 times to elect a new leader, the country appears to have finally turned a corner this time round. Yameen had 51.39% of the vote, according to results provided by the Elections Commission. He's the half-brother of former autocrat Maumoon Abdul Gayoom, who ruled the country for 30 years. Another former president, Mohamed Nasheed, who resigned last year amid protests, received 48.61% of the vote. Nasheed led with 47% in last week's first round to Yameen's 30%, but a runoff was required because no candidate got 50%. Yameen called on people to respect the results and support his administration as it tries to generate economic growth going forward.
Important focus of our coalition government to improve the economy, to stable the Maldivian rupiah vis-a-vis the dollar, and also to create opportunities for the youth, to show to the international community and also to the Maldivians that we are capable of governing a modern democratic society rather than exercising or rather than flexing our muscles.
Still, the protracted nature of this election has worried international observers, who feel it's a sign the country is returning to its more authoritarian roots. Nasheed received 45% in the first election held in September, but the result was annulled by the Supreme Court after complaints about irregularities with the voters' register. Last month, police stopped a second attempt at the election because all the candidates did not accept a new voters' list. And the court intervened again to change the runoff election date, which had been set for the day after the November 9th vote. Well, the Maldives has been in the past one of the top holiday destinations, but political upheaval in recent years has put a dent to the archipelago nation's tourism industry. Evelyn Leung went there earlier to find out more.
Blue skies, crystal clear water, and white sand beaches form the backdrop to the Indian Ocean holiday destination, the Maldives. But beneath the idyllic scenery, there is an undercurrent of increasingly conservative Islamic views among some Maldivians. Earlier this year, a 15-year-old rape victim was sentenced to 100 lashes for engaging in premarital sex. Human rights group Amnesty International called this unacceptable. In 2011, the country's first democratically elected president, Mohamed Nasheed, said he was forced to call for a ban on luxury spas and restrictions on alcohol sales at holiday resorts. He resigned last year amid protests in what he claimed to be a coup. The country then descended into chaos as supporters and opponents of the Nasheed government clashed with each other on the streets. At the time, some foreign governments advised their nationals to avoid the holiday destination for their own safety. The clashes have since come to a halt. But is it safe for tourists to travel there now?
It's perfectly safe. There aren't, in the 40 years of tourism history in Maldives, I'm proud to say that we never had an incident where a tourist has been attacked.
Now, even if there are protests going on in the Maldives, some of the locals told me there's nothing for tourists to be afraid of because the protests usually happen in the capital city, Malé, a place where tourists rarely go to. Evelyn Leung, TVB News, reporting from the Maldives.
Philippine President Benigno Aquino offered reassurance today that his government is doing everything it can to assist the survivors of last week's super typhoon Haiyan. Aquino made the comments during a visit to Leyte and Samar Islands, two of the hardest hit areas. His visit comes as a massive international aid effort begins to gain traction. James Ainke reports.
Slowly, bit by bit, vital supplies are beginning to get to the survivors of a catastrophe. Thirsty, hungry, and desperate, many victims have been left to make do on their own. With safe drinking water still scarce, it is one of the top priorities of an international aid operation. The USS George Washington is at the center of the supply effort. The virtual floating city sends out a steady stream of helicopters on supply runs. As the aid effort begins to gain ground, it's expected to get a major boost with more ships, equipment, and critical supplies on the way.
So any contribution that we can make, whether it be water, food, shelter, medical supplies, that's the support we're going to provide.
As the airlift continues, vital filtration systems are now up and running in some of the hardest hit areas. Emergency medical teams are starting to reach more isolated communities where survivors have had to fend for themselves for days.
When we came here, we found a totally flattened town. The houses all are down. The hospital is totally in ruins. We're also trying now very hard to go into more rural areas to map what the health needs are.
Maybe someday, maybe how many days, maybe they will be hungry so much. So the people will need food. That is the very important. And the medicine.
During a visit to eastern Samar Island, President Aquino surveyed the damage and thanked volunteers assisting with relief. Facing criticism for his government's response to the typhoon, Aquino offered assurances that his administration will provide everything survivors need. At a nearby church where many have taken refuge, local residents aren't convinced.
No water. And then seldom that I can see the government serving us now. No, only the foreigner. I received this morning 1 crackers and also the mineral water.
As progress continues on the relief effort, it's becoming clear that getting back to any sense of normal is still a very long way off.
And here, the Hong Kong Salvation Army has raised about $1 million for those affected by Haiyan in the Philippines. Vicky Kung has more details about some of the relief efforts being organized in Hong Kong.
Though it's the Philippines where Haiyan struck, many migrant workers in Hong Kong also felt the impact of the storm. She has 5 cousins in one of the worst hit cities, Tacloban.
Thanks God that I contact here about 4 days ago. I'm so thankful that my family life was saved, but only that the more people there was really need help.
A Christian association, Jerai Fund, held a vigil this afternoon to gather donations and pray for those wounded, missing, or killed in the storm. The organization hopes locals can actively engage themselves in relief work and put aside grudges against the Philippine government in relation to its handling of the 2010 Manila bus hostage incident that left 8 Hong Kong people dead.
We are so thankful in His name to pray for Philippines. May God's love heal the relationship between Hong Kong and Philippines.
One of the victims of the Manila hostage crisis, Yik Siu Ling, also wrote this church a letter calling for support for Filipinos who have been affected by this disaster. Yik also criticized the Filipino government of being slow and incapable when handling crisis. So far, the Salvation Army has raised about $1 million.
The tsunami happens in Japan. Well, 1 week after, we got millions of donations, and I remember once saying 3-4 millions and from the public, but now we only got a lot more than $1 million, and so this is something that we worry.
But this courier that mainly serves Filipinos in Hong Kong said it's confident that the local people are willing to help. The shop owner said she has sent 6 boxes of relief items to Manila in the past few days. Half of them came from Hong Kong people.
We accept from a Hong Kong resident giving us like 1,079 tins of milk, and we are very thankful, and hopefully we can send them very quickly.
The shop also suggests that people can donate towels, medical goods, and dried food like noodles, as they are comparatively easier to keep. Meanwhile, companies and charitable organizations like the Red Cross have set up hotlines to help search for missing people. Some of them also provide psychological consultations. Vicky Ko, TVB News.
Russia has handed over an aircraft carrier to India after years of delays. The handover took place at a Russian shipyard near the Arctic Circle yesterday. The refitted Soviet-era ship was commissioned into Indian Navy. The ceremony was attended by the Russian Deputy Prime Minister and Indian Defense Minister. The aircraft carrier was built in the final years of the Soviet Union and named the Admiral Gorshkov. It has now been renamed INS Vikramaditya and can carry up to 30 aircraft and a crew of around 2,000. India signed a deal to buy the ship in 2004. The refitting was supposed to be finished in 2009, but the price was increased and delivery postponed until 2012. The handover was later delayed again by another year. India's first British-built aircraft carrier was bought in the 1960s and decommissioned in 1997. Another ex-British carrier is in operation but is reaching the end of its service. The country launched its first domestically built aircraft carrier this year, but it will not be fully operational until 2017.
Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapaksa says his country needs more time to address concerns raised after the end of the civil war. The comments come as a summit of Commonwealth members, countries which used to be part of the old British Empire, finished today. British Prime Minister David Cameron, who was at the meeting, has been the most vocal in raising concerns about allegations of human rights abuses towards the minority Tamil population. But Rajapaksa rejected any move for an independent inquiry into what happened at the end of the civil war in 2009. He suggested Cameron's interference was unhelpful, saying those in glass houses must not throw stones.
And still ahead in the news. A man arrested for keeping a wild pig as a pet. Another international expert to look into heart specialist controversy. And British driver Alex Lynn wins the Macau Grand Prix.